All right. Welcome, everybody. Christian Nix here. Thank you very much, and congratulations on your decision to join me at the Nix Institute for Self-Healing and Integration. This is a major, major league achievement for me, and I believe will be a turning point for a lot of you in your ability to manage your own health conditions. When I put this material together, I was traveling the world. I actually taught on 4 different continents during these years, creating hospital clinics and sharing this material with medical doctors. I created 2 medical education companies, one on my own and with practitioners within my own profession, and one also with several different doctors in North America. And I can tell you this material cuts ice at every level of medicine. So don't be intimidated. Nothing in here is so high level that you have to have a medical background or a medical degree. You don't have to be a doctor to understand what I'm going to share with you, obviously. But it is that quality and that caliber, that level of medical expertise that I'm trying to bring. And I think when you see it and when you understand, and this is the purpose of this very short video, I'll keep this as brief as I can, but the idea here is that I show you how to get the most out of the training program. Do not expect to master all of this in a day or a month. As they say, Rome was not built in a day. If you want real control over your chronic symptoms, if you want to really take back a measure of serious control over your own health, you're going to have to give this a little time to settle in. Some of the concepts are completely unknown to our culture. And so this brings up the first point. Okay? What you're seeing here, Christian Nix did not make this up. I went deep enough into other cultural medical systems and then brought back certain key concepts, and I'm going to explain the most important of them to you, to try to give people access to what really is a bunch of very ancient and very valuable wisdom on how to manage your own health. Remember, in pre-modern times, you didn't have things like antibiotics and surgery and emergency rooms and things like this, so every medical system on the planet had to have some way to help people. Mostly, if you were in an emergency condition, you were dead, right, prior to modern emergency medicine. That's why it's such an incredible addition. But, as I've said multiple times in other places in this program, it does not help you when you have a chronic condition. Emergency medicine is for emergency conditions, and if you use it for chronic conditions, you can end up in serious trouble, as many of you have already found out. If you're coming to this video and this program from my Pivot Protocol, you already know that going to a doctor for something like chronic digestive illness it actually has negative value, because now you really think that there is nothing medicine can do for you, right? You've been to the highest level of medicine and nothing worked and nothing helped, and in fact you got worse. So now you think you have nowhere else to turn, right? That's a really serious situation to be in, because you very quickly give up and kind of accept that you have to live with terrible digestive disease, and that's absolutely 100% not true. Not only does modern medicine have negative value when it comes to treating certain chronic conditions, but it also, right, it makes you much sicker, right, to be taking pills that are designed for short-term relief. If you have a chronic condition, you better get down to what's causing that at the root level, or you are never going to recover the way you need to, and you will just keep digging the hole deeper. So most of you understand that already. Let me dive into what makes this such an incredible new program, and that I think will really turn the tide for a lot of you in helping to manage and recover from your chronic symptoms. Just like the Pivot Protocol, just like my other material, all of this works based on the fact that your body does have a very, very sophisticated, very elegant system of self-healing ability already wired into it, obviously. Children who don't have the ability to heal from illness and injury and disease and things growing up die. So if you're alive watching this, trust the fact that your body has a built-in self-healing system, and that it's done pretty well to get you to whatever age you're at. Because if it didn't exist, if it was some fantasy that I'm making up, right, you for sure would not be watching this. You would not be here able to do this. So we're going to leverage the power and the ability of your body's own self-healing system. That's what we're doing. That's what self-care is all about. There's all kinds of tips and tricks on how to do this, but there's also an underlying unifying logic that I have to point out to you here, because otherwise you can flail about and not really understand that the system is designed as a system. So when you get your login information, go to the home page. It should look like this, okay? And you will see Patient Empowerment Self-Care Manifesto. Click here, download it. I already have it open in a tab up here. And then Patient Empowerment and Self-Care Matrix, okay? I'm going to scroll over here and I'm going to explain how these two things fit together. The book, the manifesto itself, if we go to that, you'll see in the table of contents, as I scroll down, how to get the most out of it, page numbers, etc. And this explains in print a good deal about what it is that you're going to face here. I highlight this term and this basic concept, the basics of pattern discrimination on page 11. Well, this is pretty interesting because here you have a situation where, unbeknownst to modern medicine, right, there is a way, and I wrote my first book about this, there is a way to make sense of all the different multiple factors that go into a chronic condition. Take something like acid reflux, since we're familiar with that, and a lot of you will have been familiar with that before you got here. You know, you take something like acid reflux, obviously something dumb, simple like blocking stomach acid cannot possibly work. It doesn't make any sense on any level, and people know it, and doctors know it. But you take acid blockers because that's the best your doctor can do, and litigation and all the rest. I mean, there's a bunch of different reasons why we're all stuck in this terrible short-term kind of thinking. But pattern discrimination is totally different. That's what I'm going to be explaining to you here. So get ready, because this is a really revolutionary new concept for pretty much everybody. If you knew about pattern discrimination, you wouldn't be part of this program. You would already be doing what it is that I'm going to share with you and teach you how to do. People who do know about pattern discrimination have been on a very long, deep journey like I did, and there's just not that many of them, right? There may be a few hundred to a few thousand in all of North America, and certainly not very many of those know how to teach and talk about this in a way that would actually help you be able to learn it and apply it yourself. That's what we're going to do here. If you look down, I'm going to take you through all kinds. By chapter 2 here, page 32, we're going to take you through all kinds of different tips, tricks, etc. These chapters, all the way to the end of the manifesto, chapter 37, right? All 37 chapters, or from chapter 2 to chapter 37, all of these correspond to your patient empowerment and self-care symptom matrix. I'll just show you here, okay? You'll see chapter headings. There's 4 major headings in the matrix itself: diet, exercise, state of mind, remedies, and treatments. If we go back to the Nix Institute member site, diet, exercise, state of mind, remedies, and treatments. So, I mean, I dare say, and I'm patting myself on the back, and hopefully not in an annoying way, but this is very clever because I figured out a way to tie all of this stuff together so you can really use it. Every single reference here ties to every other reference. Okay, now we're going to start with, you can page right through here, go to the diet tab and start watching, right? It's set up that way, but you're also going to see certain information on there, and that's what I'm going to explain to you here. So let's go over to the patient empowerment self-care sign symptom matrix. Okay, that's this Excel spreadsheet document. Now, first of all, quick word about any terms that don't make sense. If we go to the manifesto, I did add a glossary of terms. It's not necessarily, these are not, it's not actually a glossary. These are definitions, but I'm trying to give you some kind of idea. Don't freak out about the language. Some of these words, some people will have seen. And a lot of people think they know what they mean. And that's a real problem because you don't know what these words mean unless you've really studied medicine at a really, really high level. Medical systems are bound by cultural belief, right? How do you know there's really molecules with little cellular structures and right? How do we know in the West that there's tiny atoms and all this running around and that's how the universe is made up? You don't. You've never seen them. Nobody's ever seen them. We can see certain things with a microscope and all the rest, but it's based on a certain belief that this is how reality is, and that if you zero in on the little molecules and the cellular, molecular level kind of thing that's causing your illness, that if you have cancer, we can zap that and get rid of it and hopefully you recover, right? That's one approach that's based on a whole belief system of assumptions and presuppositions. I'm not saying it's true or false. I'm saying it's a way of interpreting reality. This way of interpreting medical reality is not concerned with that cultural belief that we have in Western medical science, that everything boils down to tiny, 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 tiny units of matter. What we're concerned with when we're treating chronic conditions is multiple factors contributing to a condition where each of these factors has to be understood because they are all influential of one another. And if we fix one factor, we may not achieve very much in the way of health and illness. We have to treat the entire, and this is the key word, just like I said at the top with the manifesto, a pattern of symptoms. You do not have one symptom if you're sick with a chronic condition. You have multiple symptoms at the same time. Turns out, right, ancient medical systems figured out that these patterns of symptoms, these symptoms are related. They are caused by deep underlying mechanisms that are pretty consistent from person to person. It's not like you have 50 billion different ways you could get sick. It's actually a pretty small number of ways. When the body goes out of balance, it goes out of balance in a really predictable number of ways, and you can figure out what's happening because these ancient medical systems have spent several thousand years trying to figure all of this out, and it's been handed down to us today. It's just unfortunate that most people in the West have no idea that this actually exists. So, don't freak out about this word. Okay, these words here, don't worry about it. Once you read in the glossary and the definitions of these words, believe me, you're going to be very annoyed that nobody explained this to you before, because as you find out, and as I discovered, it was like getting hit by lightning when I realized this, medical systems are not just bound by culture, they are largely defined by the words that you use to describe health and illness. This was a revelation to me. How could a definition of health or illness be different on one side of the planet than the other? If you think about it, it's mind-blowing. It really is, because obviously you know a human being wherever you see one. So how is it possible that what we define as health in our culture could possibly be different from what some other group of people in another culture defines as health? What we define as illness is not illness to them. What we define as being healthy is illness to them. That's crazy, because it implies that there's a deep underlying cognitive kind of difference between how people define health and illness. And that's what you're going to discover here, and it is mind-blowing, because the power that you have just by learning a few new words, and what are words when we're talking about medical systems? Words are markers that point toward concepts. You don't have the word, you don't have the concept. You don't have the concept, you can't work within a system that helps you to deal with. And here, right, I've already made the distinction between emergency conditions, which respond very well to the Western, your body is a machine kind of motif, and the ancient kind of holistic model that I'm sharing with you here, which is not a New Age model, right, much to the dismay of people who are really into New Age mysticism and all the rest. You'll get none of that here, thank God, because I went through my New Age phase, and it took me about 3 to 6 months, and I was already out the other side of it. And so what I have for you here then is a model that helps you make sense out of chronic illness. All the different patterns of symptoms start to make sense because you understand there's a single underlying cause or multiple causes for your various patterns. Nobody even has one pattern. You have multiple symptoms in one pattern, but you have multiple patterns, right, contributing to multiple different kinds of symptoms. And those causes can be understood and then, of course, counteracted so that you recover. Okay? So, let me show you how to use the matrix here, because that's the point of this. Okay, you will see here, I am in the farthest left column here on my screen. And let's just go to, so this is a pattern. That is the name of a pattern. Pattern, name, and description, signs, and symptoms. There's a name of a pattern, and then there's a whole list of signs and symptoms that go along with that. I encourage you, the tongue and pulse information, I left it in because I said this is for doctors and medical professionals, and you should kind of, I don't know, you should see it. It's interesting. It's not necessary. You don't need to know tongue and pulse diagnosis to actually apply this. It's kind of interesting, and in some cases it's bloody obvious, right? So let's go down to one that's really simple. This is the most common pattern in somebody with chronic condition. It's guaranteed to be there. Spleen vacuity, don't worry, vacuity, repletion, all of these different terms are laid out for you. So I'm not going to define it here. You can figure that out for yourself just by reading the manifesto and going to the end of the book. Key symptoms, so we look at the symptoms underneath this: fatigue, tendency to lose stools, cold hands and nose, Orthostatic hypotension, that means dizziness when you stand up. You stand up and like, whoa, right? You have to grab the table or hold the wall for a second until the rest of your mojo gets up with you. And craving for sweets, okay? And the tongue will be swollen with teeth marks around the edges, okay? All of those symptoms are caused by the pattern of vacuity in your spleen. Your spleen is vacuous, meaning that it's empty, it's missing something, right? It's out of mojo, it's out of good functional ability and capacity. The next column here, and this is kind of interesting, maybe, okay? But it helps you to reinforce your thinking. The essential symptoms are listed in red. So with spleen vacuity, our example here, we know, right? If you have fatigue, there's no other pattern except spleen vacuity that gives you the symptom of fatigue. So fatigue is a silver bullet. We call silver bullet symptoms. If you have a fatigue of any duration, no matter how severe, no matter how mild, you do have spleen vacuity. There's no other pattern that causes that. We're looking for the relationship between cause and effect. Cause and effect. Fatigue is the effect of spleen vacuity. If you get dizzy standing up, there's no other pattern that gives rise to that. So that is a silver bullet as well. I would also add here, probably for most people, sweet cravings is also a silver bullet, possibly. I didn't put it in here for whatever reason when I created this, but I think over clinical experience, probably sweet cravings is it could go on this list as well. Again, it's to help clarify your thinking. Okay? Swollen tongue with teeth marks. There's no other pattern that gives rise to that. You can only have swollen tongue with teeth marks if you have spleen vacuity. So if you have any of these, or one of them, you know that this is one of your patterns. So let's say you have a chronic condition, you are sick chronically, you do have spleen vacuity, and one or all of these things is going on for you. And you may even have loose stools, cold hands, and nose. If you notice that, that's very suggestive of. Okay? Now, the next column says, if you see the pattern, right? If you see this pattern, meaning spleen vacuity, in our example, you should consider this or these other patterns. If you have spleen vacuity, you are headed for phlegm and dampness. Now, I explain this to students of the Pivot Protocol. Your spleen is like the fire of your digestion, and when it gets weak, food doesn't digest right, and then it goes into your intestines, and it's like mud. It just sits there like sludge, okay? That's dampness. I'll explain phlegm. It's inside the manifesto. I'm not going to say more about it here, but phlegm is a kind of subspecies of dampness. They always appear together, depending on how much heat is present as well. So the pattern of phlegm and dampness. Oh, I have spleen vacuity. I might have phlegm and dampness too. Let's go down the list and look for phlegm and dampness, okay? Plum pit sensation, I already talked about this for students of the Pivot Protocol. That's the feeling of difficulty we call in Western medicine, modern Western medicine. It's called globus hystericus. It's that feeling that you can't swallow. If you've ever tried to eat peanut butter off a spoon, right? It gets stuck in your esophagus. It's that feeling, but like all the time. You try to swallow anything, and it feels like there's a blockage, and your food won't go down. That's plum pit sensation. That can be caused by phlegm and dampness. It's not the only thing that causes plum pit sensation, so it's not a silver bullet symptom, but you could have a lot of phlegm, postnasal, nasal drip. You could have mucus in your stools, right? Phlegm from any orifice, nodules, lumps, tumors, lipomas, this kind of thing. That's phlegm and dampness. If you're obese, you have phlegm dampness, right? That's for sure, right? So obesity is highly suggestive. Oily skin, right? If you have a really oily complexion, that's phlegm and dampness trying to come out through your skin. You have a lot of mucus and phlegm and fluids built up, and it's coming out. Okay, so you see how this works? You can target all your different symptoms. You can go as deep into this as you want. We're in this column. If you see this pattern, you should also consider, and our example is spleen vacuity. We look at phlegm and dampness. That's one possible thing that could be going on in addition to, so we have to consider that and go check. You could have kidney yang vacuity, heart chi and blood vacuity, lung vacuity, blood vacuity by itself. All of those patterns exist here in the left column where you would find any of the discrete individual patterns. Okay? So I hope that makes sense, because you can have a ton of fun with this. This is why you probably should consider, right, if you're serious about your health and you really, really need to take control, you should give yourself a good 12 months with the patient empowerment system. It's that deep. It's that rich. There's that much detail here. If you're just curious, right, you can check it out, right, and do whatever you want with it. But people who need this level of expertise, there is no system anywhere that I am aware of teaching regular folks to try to deal with their conditions. And you do it all simply by looking down the left, start at the leftmost column, and check your symptoms and see what's going on for you, and then use the rest of the information here to look at other patterns that might be present. This gives rise to these. That's what that means. Spleen vacuity doesn't stay spleen vacuity. It turns into other patterns as well. And it's not like this one goes away just because you start getting these. You start adding other things. That's what serious chronic illness looks like. Okay, now let's move on to, now we're at the, remember how we broke down the material: diet, exercise, state of mind practices, remedies, and treatments. All of these chapters, again, relate to the manifesto, but also you will have in the manifesto, also you will have good, or in the member site material, you will also have an individual page for each of these. And the patterns themselves, if we go back to our pattern of, say, spleen vacuity or liver depression, chi stagnation, if you look at these two, there's a reason these two are at the top. If you look at these two and go to the member site, what do you find on the member site? Let's take a look at exercise, okay? Abdominal exercise. Here is where you see all of the pages have this material. A video demonstrating, and then what patterns does this particular video, approach, solution, remedy, practice treat. All exercise treats liver depression. All exercise helps with spleen vacuity. All exercise helps with blood stasis, because you're pumping blood, which is great for your spleen. It's great for your liver. You're getting rid of dampness. That's why exercise is so good. And also, right, it benefits a lot when you have food stagnation. That's why working out is so bloody good for you. Every single one of these pages, it doesn't matter where you go. Here I've made comments about state of mind practices and how all of these have general effects to aid with liver depression, especially because that's the pattern most prominent with stress. So it's not listed here individually on all of these pages, but go back to the remedies section. Here you go, right? Oiling your skin helps with liver depression, blood vacuity, liver, blood, kidney, yin. And then if you went and looked on the matrix for liver, blood, kidney, yin, lo and behold, right, it's all these symptoms. It's heat plus dryness. So oiling your skin does take a burden off of your body. It helps with the dry aspect, which helps cool off your heat situation, etc., etc. The entire program is linked together this way. We have a member site with all kinds of material for you to access, not just the video demonstration, but a little blurb here, okay, explaining why I think this is important, how to right, apply the demonstration that I'm giving you in the video, and also the sign-symptom matrix, and also the chapters corresponding to each of the solutions given for the different patterns on the left column, all of these different chapters corresponding to your patient empowerment and self-care manifesto. There's so much good material in here, guys. If you finished in less than a year, you really should pat yourself on the back. If you can master this in under a year, it means you're a fabulous student, and maybe you need to be a really good student because you really have your back to the wall. I'm just going to show you a chapter or two here. I repeated some of the pattern material here in the manifesto so you have an easy reference to it. Okay, this is important for you to understand. Excuse me. Explaining the important word, and then we get into, right, the importance of diet, understanding how to eat according to your patterns. There is no perfect diet except the one that's perfect for you. So I'm going way deep into diet, much deeper than we go in the pivot protocol. And when we get down to chapter 2, shopping for empowering staple foods, and we go to the member site, and lo and behold, that is our first video demonstration. Okay, you look over here, you would find that under the diet module, you would find that here, depending on what particular page has to refer to which particular pattern of imbalance. Okay, guys, I don't want to beat this whole thing to death. I think you understand. I think that's enough that you kind of get that the entire system is really integrated in a way that helps you maximize your time and your effort. I appreciate your business. I love when I get some really touching kind of emails from people about how some of this material has absolutely saved their life and completely changed everything and helped them return to health. To me, that's why I continue to do it. And when I created this material, I did reach a point where I thought, well, I'll never be able to get this out to the people who need it, because I was really stuck thinking that I had to go through the modern medical system. And it turns out it was like a real blessing that I turned my back on that and kind of went out on my own to try to bring this to the people who need it most, which is you. So thank you for being on this journey with me. Always you can send me your questions. Don't forget, we have a monthly briefing. I will not just be talking about health. We're going to expand beyond that. Obviously, bodily health, that's kind of your job. That's your responsibility. I don't need to say this, but I've said it elsewhere, and I'll say it again one last time. If you need to get to a doctor, you get to a doctor. Okay, this is not to take the place of serious medicine. If you're in serious trouble, that's not my responsibility. That's your job to be smart about. What we're trying to do here is provide a way from another culture's point of view to give you the kind of tools and power and understanding. Enough with the positive thinking crap, right? That's the definition of New Ageism. I'm not a big positive thinking guy. I actually think negative things most of the time because it's the best way to prepare. As I'm filming this, there's a hurricane right off the coast, and you prepare for the absolute worst possible outcome. If you're studying to be healthy, then you look at what you need to do to take control of your health. If you're in serious trouble, you get to an emergency room, you get to your doctor, you make sure that you use modern high-tech medicine to protect yourself from the worst possible outcomes. Okay, you do not use this in place of your doctor's advice and anything else. I am offering generalized commentary and advice based on my experience studying several different cultural medical systems from cultures vastly different than our own modern Western medical system. And that is mostly what I am trying to do, to share this with you. Take responsibility for your health. Don't blame it on somebody else, and for sure don't blame me because you ended up in trouble. Make sure that you're doing the right thing for yourself and your loved ones. This is really designed to supplement your ability to help yourself, and obviously, hopefully, you do stay out of your doctor's office. But if you gotta go, then you go, and you play it smart and you play it safe. Okay? Otherwise, that's enough out of me. And thank you again for being along with me on this journey. I'm going to do my very best for you. The monthly briefing is going to share all kinds of new stuff that I'm into, and I have a worldwide network of people that I deal with and talk to, and that I'm constantly reading and scanning and traveling and finding out new things to share with you and your family and loved ones. And I will be bringing you that in a video briefing, and also you can send me questions, and we will have a monthly Q&A that I will post somewhere to give you access and create an archive. Make sure that you, if you do miss one, that you can get your questions answered and refer to that as you're learning the system. Okay? Thanks very much. I really appreciate it, and I can't wait to be talking to some of you and to find out how you're doing with all of this. I certainly want to do my very, very best for you. So get into it, do your best, study hard, and send me your questions when you have them. Thanks so much.